Welcome to Refocused Radio. Once again, we are here today. And man, if you love sports, we're going to have a good time this morning. We have a special guest today, Darren Ault. He is the author of Out of Bounds. And I can't wait to just talk about what he's doing, because if you're listening to this show, you know it's all about not just refocused moments, but it's also about real life moments to expose raw truth and to give you great perspective. This guest, he does that. We're talking politics, power plays, and the kind of silence that destroys reputations. This book is also centered around a respected coach blindsided by false accusations and steamrolled by out-of-control ambition from sidelined parents, school boards, and all of it. Once again, Darren, I know you clear your schedule for us today off your calendar, so I want to say thank you for taking the time, man. How are you doing today, man?
I'm doing well, Shemai, and thank you for offering the opportunity to have a conversation. It's meaningful.
Well, I appreciate you being here, man. When it comes to what you have been able to piece together with this project, let's talk about the gray area. Where's the line between the parent being involved and parent being dangerous to the system?
You know, I've through the course of writing this book and having conversations like this around it, and a couple book signings where I've talked to just random people, you know, if you were to chart what the responsibilities of a parent are for their child, and what the responsibilities of a coach are for that youth player, I would venture to guess, and I've done it myself, that a lot of the explanations or a lot of the words you would choose are very similar. You know, to guide, to develop, to love, to nurture. Those are the roles by both parties, parent and coach. And they're parallel in a lot of ways, but where they intersect is at that youth, at that player. And in an ideal world, the line coming out is straight. They're together, they're in harmony, they're working together. But way too many times in youth sports today, those lines start to separate at the point of the player, where the parent feels either entitled or has passed entitlement onto their child, where they have invested a lot of money in different training and AAU and things that aren't working out or producing the results that they think they should. And ultimately, you know, maybe not getting the playing time or starting like they think their child should. And so you start to see that split coming out of, you know, those lines that were once intersected. They start to split now because the coach often becomes the blame or the catch-all for the blame that their child's just not doing what they should be doing in sports, or they feel they should be doing in sports.
You also dive into how accusations, how they can take a life on their own. With or without evidence. In your eyes, why do we as a culture seem to, I mean, we've seen some recent things in some games in the real world. We don't have to go that rabbit hole, but in your eyes, why do you think culture seems to be quicker to react than to investigate?
I think there's a fear in the administration and the leadership of schools, of boards, where any accusation that's made, and this is where the real unfortunate part is, our culture, and especially out of COVID, became more me-centric, more, accusatory of each other instead of trusting of each other. And so any action or any accusation that was levied all of a sudden is assumed to be accurate. And there's no longer the justice part of, presumed innocent until proven guilty. And so leaders, I think, or the supposed leaders in these organizations that run our schools and run our towns and committees and things like that, they kind of hide behind the label or the title that they have and lose their objectivity, their neutrality in representing both parties, and are afraid of lawsuits, are afraid of losing their job, protecting themselves, as opposed to looking at what the real circumstances are around this accusation, where, leaders are meant to lead. They're elected to lead. And so there are times, not everything's going to be cushy, right? There are going to be times where there are pivotal or frustrating conversations. But in order to get to the truth and enact the right procedures and the right justice, you have to have those conversations.
Once again, speaking conversation, listen to Refocused Radio and watching us online, talking to our guest today, Darren Ault, the author of Out of Bounds. You can get it anywhere. You can get books online. Once again, let's pick it up from your book. While you understand that sports a lot of times people can just be silent when it comes to speaking up. Why do you think so many people stay quiet when they know something isn't right?
Again, I think there's that measure of self in there that if it's not about me, then I don't need to worry about it. Fortunately, in my case, and I write about it in the book, where I was falsely accused of inappropriate touching by one player and her parents, who were not even on the varsity team, but felt like they should be, and didn't want to go through the efforts to earn their stripes and to be integrated into the team play. So they decided to take a very nasty shortcut, by accusing me of such vile actions. The fortunate part that I was starting to allude to is that every other family, every other player, every other parent involved did actually stand up and represent and asked, pleaded for the board to reinstate me and my staff, because we did nothing but treat their children with respect, with courtesy, with honor, develop them as young ladies, as young players, and really had a great team chemistry going. The unfortunate part about it was that, again, the board, the leaders didn't want to act. They wanted to just kind of let it ride. So there was a good number of people, one father in particular, who really stood up, very adamant about the fact that I did not do anything wrong. As a matter of fact, the accuser, it wasn't about inappropriate touching with her. She had accused me of inappropriately touching two other players, one of which was this gentleman's daughter. The man who was most vocal, who was most vehemently on my side, was saying that's absolutely impossible, never happened. Coach should be back on the sidelines.
And how much do you believe that adults project their own dreams and fears or power trips when it comes to youth sports? Because that's something else you explore in the book.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's way too much. I mean, and it's gotten worse. It's gotten progressively worse. And that's one of the things that inspired me to write the book, was I started to notice this trend of, and again, it's a handful at most of parents throughout a 33-year career. But nonetheless, there was this trend of increasingly angry or volatile interactions from parents. And a lot of times when you boil it down, it's something as silly as, hey, I'm on the athletic association and my son or daughter should have a free pass to make your team. And that's not the way the world works, right? Or, my kid's an 8th grader on a 7th and 8th grade team. They should start. They should be on varsity. Again, not the way it works. And going up, projecting into the high school situation, the one I just recently alluded to, because there were two other freshmen that were earning some time at the varsity ranks. Well, my daughter should have the right to do that too. She has the right to earn it, but the earning didn't happen, right? So I think there's a big part of that. I think parents historically have tried to live vicariously through their kids, where maybe, they didn't do as well in basketball, or even if they did, sometimes that's the worst case, when you have a star mom or dad and they expect immediately, just through bloodlines, that their kid is going to be a star as well. And so that gets frustrating. I've talked a few times around, the investment that parents make in training today is ridiculous. The amount of money spent in training, and not only training itself, but the multitude of trainers for one player. So one person could have 3-4 different trainers in their head, and then have to go talk to the coach and figure out what the coach wants too. And it just gets mentally and emotionally and physically straining on a child. But when parents don't see that investment turning around, all that money spent not reaping the reward for it, the rewards, I think they start to get a little frustrated and start to lash out as to everybody else is at fault. I've been spending all this money on training. And then, things like AAU, where there's a lot of money, a lot of time put into it. And AAU is not at the same level or standards of player development as it used to be.
And just to follow up on that, when you look at parents who are doing it right, and they happen to have a star player, what's some of the differences that you see with how they are supporting their child? Because if you have a parent who happens to have a child who's kind of beating the odds and almost pouring themselves into a leadership role in the team, what's some of the differences you see how they handle that type of success?
Yeah, parents who get it, who are invested in the partnership of coach-child relationship, coach-parent relationship, are amazing people. And again, I want to point out that was the vast majority of my experiences, but nobody likes to read about good things. So I thought I would share the complicated things, but those parents get it and are truly partners. They are. They'll come and have conversations with you. If there's a question around, it's not about, how can my daughter start? Why doesn't she start? Or why doesn't she have 32 minutes out of the game? It's more around, how can my daughter help? How can she contribute? What do we need to do to get better? And that dialogue, those kind of questions, that conversation changes the scene dramatically. Right? Where, again, if you go back to what we started with on the parallel lines, you're both working towards trying to help that child develop, not just as a player, but as a human being, as an adult who's going to be, have positive interactions when they leave high school and get through college and ultimately are out into the real world.
And speaking of the real world, education doesn't stop on the court. It actually goes into the classrooms as well. You also explore in the book, you touch on school boards and politics in education. What's something most people don't know about how those systems work behind the scenes?
Well, my whole experience and journey through what had happened at the very end of my career, what caused me to stop coaching, outside of having opportunities to coach, it caused me to stop coaching because it just left such a bad taste, was the ineffectiveness, the lack of willingness for the board to engage. And they're all elected to positions to lead and monitor and work through school issues and support both staff and student. Coaches are part of the staff and work through any disagreements. And they just absolutely wouldn't do it. For 40 days, Shemaiah, 40 days, I sat on the sideline without even knowing what exactly I was accused of. Nobody, and I'd start reaching out to the administration, starting with the principal at first, who was somewhat engaging at the beginning, but then eventually just started to ghost me like I was a problem. And all I wanted to do was get to the truth. Let's pull the people together in the room. Let's have a conversation, and get to the truth. But they all hid behind the phone, hid behind their a lack of leadership presence, because unfortunately at the time, the board that I was dealing with had a temporary superintendent, not the elected superintendent. So again, nobody wanted to step up and be accountable to decision making. It was easier for them to let things slide. And 40 days is the entire season, right? So it was a lot easier for them to get to the end of the season and then eventually say, and make the decision that they made, which, by the way, was to pay me in full for the season, even though I coached 9 games, to afford me the opportunity to reapply for the job next year if I went through sensitivity training, an undescribed sensitivity training. So why would I go work for an administration that has absolutely no support for a coach?
Once again, this is on Refocused Radio, talking to our guest today, Darren Ault, author of Out of Bounds. When you think about how, like you said, you've been saying throughout the show, good people can get steamrolled and blindsided, if you will. What helps, do you believe, based on your experience, help them to stand back up? And what do you believe help you personally keep your character as far as going through the whole process?
Well, I think it always starts with a foundation of faith, right? You have to have the strength and character to understand who you are and be comfortable in who, and I knew who I was, and the family support I had was tremendous. Of course, families tend to rally around you whether you're right or wrong, which is a great thing, but they absolutely understood the circumstances and rallied behind me to provide the support necessary just to help me get through what was a pretty difficult 2-year process for me to actually kind of get to the point where I could get past it. What was really cool beyond those two things, faith and family, was the community of basketball in the New Jersey area who, within an hour of the accusation coming out, which at first was unsettling to me, that how are people outside of the school already aware of this? But within an hour, coaches, athletic directors, referees were reaching out to me, making statements around, they absolutely know this is false, supportive statements, one guy even said to me, if the school's going to do this to you, who are they going to get to coach at that school? Which again was a testament and statement to their belief in my character. Eventually the press started to reach out to me and within the same day, which just blew my mind that all this was already out, you know, and again, no protections for the person who's being accused. But yeah, the support of the community and the strength and not just on that day, but through the entire process, to the point where, and I've mentioned this before, I mentioned it in the book as well, go into great detail, where there was a school board meeting 2 weeks after the accusation, and 2 different occasions, a parent got up and read a letter on behalf of the parents. So they were signed by all but one set of parents and alumni parents for asking for reinstatement of me and my staff and supporting our character and our culture. And then another parent got up and read a letter on behalf of the players, all but one, including alumni players. Again, reinstate or asking for my reinstatement, sharing the kind of respect and courtesy that their daughters were given every day.
What kind of conversation do you hope that this book can begin in locker rooms, in board meetings, and in family homes?
There's a lot of layers to that onion, Shemai. I mean, the first thing, if you're going to be a leader, if you're going to enlist yourself or offer yourself up for a leadership role, don't be afraid to lead. You know, be accountable, have what Jocko Willink calls extreme ownership. You know, at the end of the day, when you're the one creating the mission and setting the goals, you're the one who's accountable for them. And as I said, the Homedale Board of Ed just absolutely lacked that direction, lacked that ownership, that accountability. So that's one thing, one conversation that people should have. For coaches, and parents alike, again, recognize that as a parent, especially, and I'm a parent, I have 3 kids, you know, adult kids now, but it takes a village to raise a child. It really does. And when we're parents and we're sending our kids off to school, it's not just paid babysitting. You know, you're asking teachers and administrators and coaches to help develop that child, to keep up the continuity of, hey, this is the value set of which I'm trying to have my kid grow with and develop as a young adult, and trust that the coaches, teachers, administrators are trying to help you do that same thing. You know, yes, there are outliers to every circumstances. There are bad parents, there are bad coaches, etc. There are bad players, you know, but everybody, for the most part, is working together. So allow for that to happen, you know, build that trust, enable your coaches and teachers to have to know that they have your backup, your backing when dealing with your child, as opposed to always trying to bail your child out. And then probably the last thing I would say, just which was a mantra of mine as I coached over 33 years, is it's okay to fail. You know, and a lot of times parents are just so guarded about their kids that they won't even let them fall down and skin their knee. You know, they don't get to experience the pain and the anguish or the struggle and the frustration that is in life. So when they get into a sport and they're no longer the top dog on the court, they don't know how to deal with it. They don't know how to ask or have a conversation with a coach around, what do I need to do to get better? So those are the things I would offer.
When you think about how this can also get players interested to read this book, what got tongue tied. What kind of educational pieces do you hope that they can take away from your story? Because like we said earlier in the conversation, once they hit the real world, they have to either be prepared or, you know, struggle.
Yeah. Again, and this is the cultivation of a trusting relationship takes more than, you know, it takes multiple sides. Everybody's got to be bought into that, and players especially. It's okay, or coaches are going to get frustrated. They're going to maybe even yell a little bit, but don't listen to the volume of what's being said to you. Listen to the context of what's being said to you, right? You know, if recognize that when a coach is talking to you, they're trying to help you get better. So don't take it so hard, so personally that you lose the message in it, right? Challenge yourself to be better. You know, again, I always encourage my kids when we're doing drills, push yourself to fail. And they'd look at me like, you want me to fail? I say, yeah, I want you to understand where your limits are, and then we can work together on how to get through those limits. And at the end of the day, have the conversation. If build a relationship with your coach as a player, right? Understand what their goals are, what their set of values are that they're bringing to the court, what they're trying to accomplish in the bigger picture of a team construct, as opposed to always worrying about how do I get my playing time, my points, like, all the glory stuff, and find out what it is you need to do to help the team succeed.
And out of bounds could change one thing in culture that you see going on with youth sports, either now or based on your experience. What would that be?
Slow down and enjoy the moment, because it is youth sports. It is supposed to be a developmental part of life, and they will not be youth forever. So if you're spending all that time in discontent, in anger and frustration, you're missing the mark entirely. And that doesn't mean that you can't focus on, try to win games or try to elevate your play or try to use those two things to get you into scholarships and things like that for college. It doesn't mean you can't do that, but put that in balance with what is going on the court, on the football field, on the baseball field, in any kind of youth sport. It is a team environment, a team effort, with a coach who's trying to have everybody recognize the potential in themselves, certainly, but what role they play in the bigger picture as a team together. And if you can do that, you're going to be a lot more successful in life than those who don't.
The last question for you before we go is, when you think about parents, and especially parents in youth sports, if you can say one message to parents, what they can do to get to know their child's coach, what are some things that you would hope that they would do and pay attention to understanding your book?
It all starts with conversation. I used to, every year prior to the season, once I had figured out who the team was, I would hold a meeting. I would have the players sit with their parents, and we would talk through what my expectations were for the boys and girls that I coached, what they can expect from me in terms of protecting and helping develop their child in the game of sport and in life, and then open it up to questions around, what do they need to know from me? How can I help them, kind of thing. The sad part about it, Shemaiah, was all my players were there, but maybe half the parents were, and so be committed to having that engagement with the coach. And if you need more than beyond that meeting, respectfully request an opportunity for one-on-one time with the coach. Because I think most coaches, I know I would, if a parent came to me and said, hey, can I schedule some time just to talk with you to better understand you, to better understand yes, absolutely. If you come at them hot and heavy after a game or after some situation, you're not going to get a good audience, and you shouldn't expect to. If you come at them hot and heavy with selfish things intent, like how come my kid didn't start, or how come my kid only got 2 minutes, that again is not a good time to have a conversation. Reword that a little bit. Tongue-tied is in today's message here, but reword that a little bit to where what can I do? What can we work on to get better, to be more contributive to the team? And if you can just kind of shape that, I think you get a much more rewarding dialogue, a much more rewarding relationship.
Once again, listen to Refocused Radio and talking to our guest today, Darren Ault, author of the book Out of Bounds. We still got a little bit more time left.
Yeah.
When you look how some players, they're fortunate enough to make it to the next level, high school and beyond that, college, and they're really fortunate they're able to play in professional league. When you see opportunities of some today's stars who have made it in professional league, what do you believe they have learned, just from your experience working with young people? What do you believe they have learned building a relationship with their coaches throughout their careers that's allowed them to sustain their success?
That's a great question. And I think there's probably two pockets for that. One is into college, which still allows for and cultivates a strong coach-player relationship, right? Whereas in the pros, I think especially on the men's side of pros, it's gotten to the point where the players are bigger than the coach. And so you start to see two different things going on there. But on the college side, the kids are yes, there are superstars out there, and what they probably realize is that they've got some God-given talent that, whether it's I can jump real high, I can throw real fast, I can run a 4.040 or, whatever it is, that's God-given talent. But how do I take that talent and further develop it, shape it, round it out so that I'm more complete as a player? And that's where coaching really at its best can help, because you've taken that individual who's so gifted and integrated them into the puzzle of a team that allows the team to grow and to develop off of that collective gift of how they work together, how they bring their individual talents. You may be a super point guard. I might be a great power forward. But at the end of the day, if we don't know how to work together, if we don't have that chemistry, it doesn't matter. And unfortunately, in the pro game, it's more superstar centric. It's all about scoring. It's all about my stuff, me. And unfortunately, players rule the day, and the stars rule the day. And that's really why you don't see a whole lot of team sport, focus in pro basketball or pro baseball or some of these other professional sports.
Once again, listen down to Refocused Radio, watching us online, talking to our guest, Darren Ault, author of Out of Bounds. You can get it right now. It is available. I want to say to you, maybe if we can have you on again, man, I think this whole sports conversation is it's a lot of things we can break down. And I know you can, especially as a coach, from a coach perspective. It would be cool if you had a podcast. I don't know if you have one, but if you had one on coaches, I think that would probably be a popular one.
So listen, I'd love talking about this to anybody, anywhere, because I do think it is it's a cancer that's eating away at a very good thing, right? Starting with youth sports. So I would love to talk to you more about it, your audience more about it. I do actually have a podcast. It's me and my son called Outside the Coach's Box, nice. where he corralled me into turning our weekend conversations around football and baseball and whatnot into let's do it in front of people on camera and on the mic. And so it's currently on Spotify and there are some YouTube videos. I mean, we're just kind of scratching it out, but it's fun just to have the non-ESPN type conversation, dig a little bit deeper into the sport, to the people, the nuances to the game, etc.
Well, I'm glad I asked. So what I'll do is for our viewers and our listeners, I'll make sure to put a link to their podcast so you can check out what him and his son are doing. So I think that's awesome. But once again, talking to Darren Ault, author of Out of Bounds, like always, want to say to you, man, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Shemai. I appreciate what you're doing and keep up the good work.